Hello and welcome to this podcast from the BBC World Service. Please let us know what you think and tell other people about us on social media. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
You're listening to a podcast from the BBC World Service. This is Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi. Thanks for downloading this edition of the programme, and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi. My guest is a former business executive turned politician. He's Sulos Chilima, Vice President of the small southern African state of Malawi. Mr. Chilima was President Mutharika's running mate in elections in 2014. Now he has left the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, and says he will run against the president in elections next year to, as he put it, save the country from destruction and corruption. Why is he criticising a government of which he is still a member? And if corruption is really as bad as he describes, why doesn't the Vice President use his influence to stop the rot? President Sulos Chilima of Malawi, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Why are you running against the very man you stood with in 2014 on a joint ticket?
Times change. And first of all, it's a constitutional right in Malawi for any person above the age of 35 and who has got the right qualifications to contest for office.
I'm not saying that you're not fit to run for president. I'm just inquiring why you have turned against Peter Mutharika and yet you were campaigning with him on a joint ticket only in 2014.
I don't think it's quite turning against him. It's just that I would like to exercise my constitutional right and contest for the office of the president.
So you want to exercise your constitutional rights. Are you also exercising and discharging your duties right now as vice president?
Well, the Vice President's office is a delegated office, constitutionally. So as I sit here and when I get back home, I still go to the office, report for duties. And because there is the office of the Vice President that needs to be run by a team of supporting technocrats and headed by an individual, I am still in that office.
So do you have meetings with President Mutharika?
Not after June. Not
since June, which is when you left the ruling DPP party?
Absolutely.
Do you meet any of the cabinet ministers?
Not officially, except when we attend functions together sometimes. It could be cultural events or church functions. And when you meet, you say hello because we worked together before.
But you're still drawing your salary as vice president, even though clearly you're not discharging your duties?
Well, I am, but like I
said, you haven't met the president since June.
No, I haven't met him. Not at all. But what I'm saying is, the office is there. The office has not been vacated. I am still in that office, and therefore I'm available to provide counsel, to respond to inquiries by citizens, respond to inquiries by different organizations as they come. So there is meetings and also there is guidance that needs to be provided in that office.
But there's suspicion about why you've not left the government.
No,
I'll just give you an example about some of the things that are being said online by Malawians. Nambewi says, why is Mr. Chilima not resigning to assure us he really wants change? He's using the Malawian tax money under the guise of vice president to fund his own party. Is that not corruption? Because you set up your own party in July. Jonas says, if I were in his position, I would publicly apologise to Malawians that I am part of that failure. You're in a very difficult position. Accept that.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no. Look, I don't think that it is entirely correct to say that I am using government money to support the UTM activities. That's not correct.
That's your new party that you set up in July, the United Transformation Movement.
It's a misrepresentation to say that we're using taxpayers' money to run our activities, because it is not taxpayers' money.
But you're taking taxpayers' money with your salary, aren't you?
The salary is there.
And your security detail.
I have a contract which runs up to May 2019.
Which is when elections are due?
When the elections are due, number one. Number two is there is the security detail that is provided by the state, because I am still state vice president.
Has President Mutharika asked you to go?
No, he hasn't.
But it is odd because, look, three cabinet ministers say it's difficult to understand or accept how Sulos Chilima can effectively discharge his constitutional responsibility of advising the president or assuming collective cabinet responsibility when he has clearly taken a stand that is opposed to and challenges the policies of the current government.
Well, again, that's just strange. I don't think that the policy of the government is to promote corruption. That's what we are fighting against. And speaking against corruption, speaking against nepotism, is actually not quite speaking against, a government. It is a government policy, rather. It is speaking against the evils. So I would disagree with inner sessions to the effect that I am speaking against government policy. It is not government policy to promote corruption.
But you're not obviously part of collective responsibility. I mean, don't you feel uncomfortable yourself saying I'm vice president, but actually, President Mutharika, I've left your party, I'm going to stand against you in elections next year. Oh, yes, I'm ready to report for duties with you, sir.
Well, I don't feel uncomfortable at all. Like I said, the office is there, right, and I go there, and I still work.
You're staying put. You're staying put.
Absolutely.
OK, so you brought up the issue of corruption. Information Minister Nicholas Dowsey says the Vice President is the second most powerful person in the country and has been there for 5 years. The question is, where was he all this time to come out now to expose corruption?
Interesting, because over the 4 years, this is 4.5 years, I have spoken against corruption at different times. I am champion of the construction sector transparency initiatives back home. We look at contracts and things in that arena. I have rebuked poor workmanship. I have spoken against ethics and poor ethics, rather, when I presented a public lecture at the University of Malawi, Moral Decadence. I mean, these I was speaking when I was actively involved in the government affairs. So it's incorrect to say that.
But if corruption has reached what you have described as an embarrassing level, you are in a very influential position to do something about it. Number two in the government. Why didn't you stop the rot?
You see, first is you engage and say, look, there is a problem here. Can we do something about it? And you speak, publicly like we did. These are pronouncements. Stopping it means that when you make a recommendation, it is taken on board. I'm not the final decision maker. I can only make recommendations.
Who's the final decision maker?
It is the President of the country.
Well, you can't imply that the President of the country is guilty of any corruption.
No, I haven't said so.
You're not saying that. But he has condemned corruption just as much as you have. You said, I've gone around giving public lectures and so on. He insists that all the accusations that are made about corruption are complete nonsense. He says, we're fighting corruption. If we all work together, we can stop this scourge, but not one person. So, I mean, he's on the same page as you are.
Well, the corruption story in Malawi is an interesting one. Nobody disagrees that there is corruption. From the president to opposition leaders to businesses to the donor community.
Sure, I'll just give an example. The Malawi Economic Justice Network says 30% of public resources get sucked up by corruption.
What is the issue is, are we really seriously fighting corruption? That's the question we should be addressing. And that's where we're coming from. We're saying we don't agree that the fight is at the level that it should be. Because I don't want to go and start making allegations against people here, but we do know that there is cases of corruption back home that are not being pursued because the people are protected, they're in government. They belong to the ruling party.
Well, I mean, the Anti-Corruption Bureau that exists in the country has been looking at, various allegations that have come up, contracts and money missing and so on and so forth. And it has said, quite clearly, at least in President Peter Mutharika's case, that he has not benefited personally from any kind of, wrongdoing. I mean, Malawi, as you say quite rightly, is still reeling from the Cashgate scandal of 2013, 2014 under the former President Joyce Banda, when tens of millions of dollars went missing, officials, politicians, all caught up in that. But, the thing is, as the President says, you've all got to come together to try to rid this scourge. Why can't you work with him rather than standing against him?
First and foremost, the Cashgate story, we need to look at it on a continuum. I think you can't pinpoint a particular between this day and that day. I think it's been going on for a few years. And the fact that there is need for collective efforts is also true, and we agree with that. However, if we are going to selectively pursue corruption cases, then we are not living our commitment, we're not living our promise. We need a situation where, from top to bottom, everybody that is suspected must be brought under investigations, and if a case is proven, prosecuted and sent to jail. That's the only time that we're going to be seen to be really living our promise. Otherwise, it's rhetoric, and some of us, we're tired of the rhetoric. We think we need to take drastic action.
So, just sticking with the corruption allegations that swirled around former President Joyce Banda, and I'm not saying that she is guilty in any way, and in fact she's returned to Malawi to contest the elections, but her record is poor, and we know that donor countries withdrew funding to Malawi, aid, which accounted for about 40% of Malawi's budget. President Mutharika reminded everybody in June only that when his government came in, he says there was absolutely no money. The country was literally bankrupt. The deficit the previous government left was as huge as the national budget, arrears in billions, both local and international, loans and so on. So why then have you met with Joyce Banda in September and talked about how you have a common vision?
Look, first and foremost, let's clarify the bit about the donor aid. It's not particularly correct, entirely correct, to say that the aid was withdrawn. Yes, budget support, as in direct budget. But aid,
well, I mean, that's what the President said. To top it all, donors who are providing 40% of our budget left us.
The money still comes in through other channels. Off-budget financing is there. $1 billion still comes into Malawi. So
all right, but the point is,
the point being,
her presidency, sure, even if she wasn't personally culpable, was very tainted.
Sure.
Right.
Meeting a former president is not an issue. And having a vision as two different people is also not an issue. And pronouncing the fact that people have got a similar vision or they see the same picture, I don't think it matters whether they are, convicts or not. The brain is still there.
No, she isn't. I said personally, I'm not saying you personally against her.
Not at all.
But I'm just putting it to you. Here you are saying, I'm really against corruption and we're not doing enough, and yet you applaud a president under whom there was this rampant corruption, as we know from the Cashgate scandal, and you say I've got a common vision with her.
Well, You just said it. You just said it that she's not a convict, or she's not facing any. No. She's not under the law. I mean,
but she presided over great corruption going on.
All I'm saying is she is not a convict. She's not answering corruption charges at this stage.
But was her record good on tackling corruption?
Well, I can reserve that because
you can reserve. Well, I can tell you. You know what happened. The donors pulled out. Tens of millions have gone missing. To
say that her corruption record was poor, I think it's unfair conclusion. But to say that under her regime we uncovered serious or massive plunder, that's correct. So the point we should be making is, did she do enough? Is the answer yes or no?
Well, the same could be said of Peter Mutharika. Why don't you work with him? The question is, has he done enough? He himself says not enough has been done, but I'm doing what I can. We're fighting it.
Absolutely. But the point being, I'm saying having a common vision does not necessarily mean that, you do everything the same way. There isn't anybody who has got a monopoly of first and foremost, the knowledge of the issues, the problems in Malawi. The solutions people can own, because these are what individuals are going to bring. So if we said, for instance, we need to sort out food security, because over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've had problems with food deficit, that's a problem statement.
All
How
right.
it is resolved is dependent on individual administrations.
OK, I'll ask you about your policies in a minute. But all this fundamentally boils down to what President Mutharika said of you, Mr Vice President. You want to be president. That's what he says.
Really?
That's what all this is about.
I think that...
well, you do want to be president, don't you?
Well, I'm going to contest them for a fact.
And in order to win.
I always put an if I go through the elective conference and I'm nominated as the torchbearer for the UTM. Then I'm going to contest. If I am not, maybe it won't happen.
Oh, so you might not stand for the UTM?
I would like to go through a democratic process.
But this is the party that you've created.
I am one of the founders.
Yeah.
I haven't created it myself. There is a group.
All right. So you may not be the presidential candidate.
If we go to the elective conference and somebody else comes up, so be it.
So elections in May next year, does that give you enough time to build a solid base when you've got the established parties, particularly in the south and in the central regions, the ruling party with its stronghold in the south, and then the opposition MCP, Malawi Congress Party, led by Lazarus Chakwera, stronghold in the centre?
What's important is what are we offering. So let me put it this way, that the elections next year first are not about changing one president or replacing a ruling party. The elections next year, and the message we're taking across, is that this is about the future of the country. And therefore, we in the UTM think, first and foremost, we're going to reach out to as many places as we possibly can. And we think we believe our message is right. And we also have the know-how and the expertise to communicate in language that resonates very well with the people of Malawi. And it doesn't matter whether there is 6 months left. We're still going to give it a very big shot. We're going to give it our best effort in order for us to penetrate. By the way, there are some people in certain parts of the country that are already excited. So the euphoria is one thing, but converting that into votes so that then we succeed is our mission.
I'm just saying that you've got quite it's an uphill struggle. You've got these, strongholds of the ruling party and the main opposition party that polled 28%, after all, the Malawi Congress Party in the elections in 2014, quite a substantial sum. So just looking at what has to be done, Malawi, obviously, a poor country. The United Nations says 71% of people in Malawi are living in extreme poverty, most of them rural dwellers, and so on and so forth. You have said that one of your eye-catching policies is you're going to create 1 million jobs in a year. Mm-hmm. And do you really think that's possible? Because the ruling party says that's just pure fantasy.
Well, it is very possible. First is we should look at the economy and say what has been the progression. Sitting here today, we described as the low human development country. This is UN Human Development Index. Low income country, according to the World Bank. Least development country, according to OECD. And of course, the stats from the National Statistics Office will say the poverty levels are going high. Now, creating 1 million jobs in that environment is a challenge. But unemployment is also one of the highest. And therefore, we are looking at the fact that there is high unemployment as an opportunity. There is sectors that today are idle. There is the agro sector, which employs close to 60% of the people, which we think can absorb people there.
So you think the agricultural sector, because the Malawian economist Henry Kaje says creating 1 million jobs within a year might be a tall order, especially considering the current macroeconomic environment. Where will the jobs be created? In the public or private sector? Okay, so you're answering his question, which is the agricultural sector?
Well, it's going to be a multi-sectoral intervention. Agriculture is one, construction will be another, the civil service will be a third. Look, unemployment is high. There is also vacancy rates, both in the private sector and in the public sector. Because instead of employing, companies are actually laying people off. We are proponents of 1 million jobs because we need, first of all, to create a critical mass. We need to create a base that is going to consume what the organizations are going to be.
It's just whether it can be done. Nobody is disagreeing with you that it would be wonderful to create all these jobs. But you've set a very high bar for yourself.
I have done so because it can be done.
You really think it can be done?
I believe it can be done and it will be done.
Are you going to campaign on that? I'm going to create 1 million jobs in a year.
I'm going to do it. Win in 2019, we'll come back and say here's 1 million jobs.
18 million people in Malawi, and you're going to create
1 million jobs.
1 million jobs. I mean, the Mutharika government, mind you, has been applauded. I mean, it's built some key infrastructure. It's emphasised that, some impressive roads like the Mazulu and Carter Road. I should say that the IMF and the World Bank have both said, actually, President Mutharika, you've done very well. The World Bank says encouraging progress has been made in human development in recent years in Malawi. It also said last year that Malawi is one of the 10 countries in Africa that's improved the most last year after implementing regulatory reforms that have made doing business easier. IMF says, look, growth is at 4% a year. Inflation is, getting under control. So he's not done such a bad job after all, has he? Pat yourself on the back. You've been part of that government.
I don't want to get the credit. It goes to one person. The IMF has just slashed the growth projection to 3.3%. So
it's still not bad.
It's still not too bad.
Yeah,
however,
performing well, it says. The economy is performing well. Yeah.
Good and bad, good or bad, we think we should be a lot better than where we are today. That's all I would like to say.
All right. So talking about agriculture, and you say there's expansion there, of course, this is something that comes up perpetually when we talk about Malawi. Around 0.5% of Malawi's export earnings come from tobacco. Yeah. And that is not a great thing. People say, obviously smoking cigarettes, very harmful. WHO would like to see the end of people smoking, the World Health Organization. It's a cash crop, it's not a food crop, and there's a lot of food insecurity. Plus, there's a lot of child labour. 38% of children between 5 and 17 work somewhere in the Malawian economy, and a lot of them on tobacco farms. They get nicotine poisoning handling the tobacco leaves. Terrible. So what's your policy on tobacco then? Do away with it in agriculture?
No.
Build it up?
I think you can't just say we'll do away with it. We are mindful of the anti-smoking lobby and the dangers associated with tobacco in terms of the nicotine, etc. We are also aware that we need to diversify away from tobacco, and that is being done. I think, including the tobacco companies,
more of that, will you?
We will have to do a lot more of that, but you can't wish away that industry because it has got an impact on other sectors, transport, suppliers of fertilizer.
You've set the bar high for yourself with 1 million jobs. Why not set the bar high also with tobacco?
Well, look, we have to diversify. Not two ways about it. All I'm saying is it's not going to happen tomorrow. We have to, unlike the 1 million jobs, I won't do that in 1 year because you've got to diversify away from the tobacco so that then you improve on your export earnings.
OK. Finally, you had a distinguished career in business. You were CEO of Airtel Telecommunications in Malawi. What makes you think that you can succeed where you think others have failed in Malawi?
First and foremost, success is a choice. Thank you for saying I was successful at Airtel. And I would like to say this, that when we got into power in 2014, I was chairman of public sector reforms, and the results are there for all to see. We started on very well, and we continued to say, for us to succeed, we needed a political driver, which I was graciously appointed to steer that program forward. And we had recorded some successes. I think it's pointless to enumerate them here. But the point being, there is a proven record of performance, and with the level of passion and the zeal and the know-how that I possess, I do not see why we cannot turn around that economy or that country. I certainly think we can do a lot better. If I was given that opportunity, I'll do it and I'll perform wonders. I can say that.
Vice President of Malawi, Sulos Chilima, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
This edition of Hard Talk was presented by me, Zainab Badawi. For details of our complete range of podcasts and our terms of use, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.